Okay, so the objectives of this lesson, the development of early policing, is to enable the viewers, the learners, as well as reviewees who are watching this video trace the early development of policing and to discuss the origin of police. By the way, the approach of this subject matter is through a multiple choice question given in the classroom. But if you are not a member of my class, I'll just give you some moment to read the question, then try to answer it. Then I'll be discussing the questions in relation to the development of policing system. So the first question, during the olden times, an urban place or an urbanized place in Greece was called politia. Okay, so the word politia. What about the word polis? Well, the word polis, it could either be referring also to a city. So it's also a word originated from the Greek people. So it means a city, or it could also be referring to a part of the city in which an administrative and religious activities are held, or it may be referring to administrative and religious city center as distinct from the rest of the city. So it is part of, we call it a city. But an urbanized place, whether it is a city or not, is referring to a politia. But a part of it that is devoted to administrative and religious centers is called polis by the Greece. And it can also signify a body of citizen, or the word polis may be referring to the citizen of that, we call it area. By the way, the word popoli in Latin, just like vox populi, vox Dei, the voice of the people is the voice of God. The word popoli is the origin of the word people, because the English people, they could not say popole, so we call that, in English we call that the people. That's where you get the word population. So basically, the word population, the word popole and people, and the word polis are more or less, they have the same meaning, maybe referring to a body of citizen. What about the word metropolis? The word metropolis is a capital city or the chief city of a country. And in the Philippines, you have the Metro Manila, or it says there a region. So, for example, if in Cordillera, where they are planning to create a Metro Baguio. A Metro Baguio will be consisting of the city of Baguio and the nearby municipalities of Benguet. To make it, we call it the capital of the whole Cordillera region. That is the idea of the word metropolis or the metropolitan. Okay, so the etymology of the word polis or police, or how the word police in the English language was coined or created. Well, there are, we call it belief where this word came from. It could either be coming from the word politia from the Greek people. It could be the politia by the Romans. By the way, the Romans, their language basically is Latin, or by the French, police. Of course, in French or in France, they have so many words more or less similar to the English language. By the way, you have the continental Europe consists of France, Rome, Greece, and other places in Rome. Then you have the non-continental Europe, and that is England. So practically, there were changes of languages during their times. Just like in the Philippines, we have so many dialects, but somehow there are similarities on the words that we use. Say, for example, in Tagalog, you say isa. In Ilocano, they say maisa. Okay? In Tagalog, dalawa. In Ilocano is dua. So something like if you study the different dialects in the country, more or less, they have similarities. Some are exactly the same and some may be different, but more or less the pronunciation are almost the same. So same thing in Europe during the olden times. Okay? So if you know the English language, if you know the Latin language, if you know the Spanish language, and if you know the Greek language, it would be easier for you to understand also the vocabulary of the English language. That is the idea. So let's take a look again on the word politia. As we have earlier discussed, it's an urbanized place. However, the word politia during the olden times could be referring to a government of a city. Okay, to a government of a city. When you say government of a city, it is the process of governing a city. Or it could also be referring to a city-state. When you say city-state, it is an urbanized place, a city with its own state. What is that? What is the meaning of state? A state has four elements. It has its own government, it has its own territory, it has its own people, it has its own sovereignty. Yun ang ibig sabihin nun. So, isang lugar, merong isang city doon na siya ay tinatawag natin, merong sariling estado, meron siyang sariling gobyerno, may sariling citizens, may sariling territory, at meron siyang sovereignty or kalayaan. Just like Singapore class. Now, Singapore was a city-state, okay, part of Malaysia. Okay? However, later on, naging independent siya, it became a country. But previously, it was a city-state. Just like in Rome, no? Doon sa Vatican, kung nasaan nandun ang sentro ng Roman Catholic, it's a city-state also. Okay? So, it may be referring also to the rights of the citizens to form a government. Okay, politia may be referring to the rights of the citizens to form a government. So, again, narinig niyo yung word na policy or policy making. So, pag sinabi mong politia, ang isang ibig sabihin din niyan noon ay yung karapatan ng mga tao para mag-create ng kanilang government at ma-involve sa tinatawag natin policy making. And for your information, Greece was part of Rome for hundreds of years, no? For so many years, or for so many hundreds of years. So, in fact, Greece was the favorite city or country of Rome when they have the Roman Empire. Okay, so the administrator or the governor of that time was the Roman emperor. So, however, the Greek people were given the right to form their government or to be part of policy making. So, that's also the idea of the word politia. Okay, so that's why during the olden time, when they say politia, they may be referring to civil officers, those who are part of the governing body, those who are part of policymakers of a city or a part of a city, and they are not necessarily referring to police officers. And who coined the word police, referring to a law enforcement officer? Well, the French. So they came up with the word police. They are now referring to a law enforcement officer. It is not the English people. In Europe, the word cap means to seize. Okay? What does it mean to seize? That is, you're going to catch or you're going to capture. You're going to take hold of it. That's the idea. Okay? If you're referring to properties, you're going to confiscate the properties and take hold of it. If you're referring to a person, a criminal, to seize means you're going to capture. You're going to take hold of that person. So the word cap, it's referring to a capper or cap in England. You're going to cap means you're going to catch. You're going to capture. So when you say capper, it's the original and the unshortened word. Instead of saying one who captures, you just say capper. That's the idea. Okay, so just like horse rider, instead of saying one who rides on a horse, so you shorten that into horse rider. So that's the idea of the word capper. Okay, it is a shortened word which means one who captures. And the term cap is recorded in Shorter Oxford Dictionary in the sense to capture from 1704, derived from the Latin capere and via the Old French caper, meaning the Romans learned it from the French caper or capper. So, capere. Okay? The Latin, more or less, they have letter E or letter I at the end. Okay? That's the idea. Just like the Romans are the Italians actually. No? Okay? So that's the idea of the word capper. Okay, so number 4, which of the following did not originate from France? Okay, so the answer is police officer. Okay, the word police officer class is just a very recent terminologies. Okay, in our contemporary generation or contemporary time. When you say contemporary, the word con means the same. Tempo means time. Okay, so in the Philippines, we do not call police officer before. We just say police. And we just called them patrolman before. Then eventually, with the introduction of the Philippine National Police, we came up with the word police officer, borrowed from other countries. But previously, during the olden times, there was no police officer word yet. Okay, so again, the word police was coined by the French, referring to a person who actually enforced the law, and later on, the English people, they borrowed it. Take note, they borrowed it. They did not coin the word police. So they borrowed it to describe a law enforcement officer. Okay? Yan. So the word cap may be referring to a constable on patrol, or it may be referring to a chief of police. We are going to discuss that again as we move on. A man was seen walking through a puddle. What is puddle? Puddle is, a muddy place, and there are some water, and then you have mud. Okay, so in the olden times, the French called those people as we call it patrolier. Okay, patrolier. You remove the I, it's okay. Patrolier. Okay, so just like a patrol officer should be walking slowly, as if they are walking through a muddy place. That's the idea. Parang kang, pag sinabi kasing patrolyer noon, yun ang describe yung tao na naglalakad sa may kaputikan. At practically, pag naglalakad ka sa kaputikan, medyo dahan-dahan, very careful yung paglakad. So, ganun din ang patrol officer. No? Ang patrol officer ngayon, ang patroller ngayon, ay hindi dapat napakabilis na maglakad. Carefully, while watching the vicinity. That's the idea. Kaya nagkaroon tayo ng word na patrolier or patroller in the English language. Okay? So, next number. But before we'll move on with the next number, let's discuss some ancient police. In the ancient Babylon, by the way, Babylon is the modern day Iraq. It's the modern day Iraq. The modern day Iran is Persia. So one of the Babylonian clay tablets, okay, shows a report from Babylonian officer to his superior. So something like a superior officer is or a Babylonian officer is reporting to his superior concerning something na kanyang nahuli, no? Something like that. And in the Bible also, same time with the ancient Babylon, by the way, nagkaroon kasi ng tinatawag na Babylon or Babylonian Empire. At yung Babylonian Empire na yan ay kinapture nila ang Egypt, kinapture nila ang Israel. Then nagkaroon din ng Egyptian Empire, nagkaroon din ng Persian Empire, yung mga Iranian, sila rin ang naging bida. Hanggang later on, nagkaroon ng Roman Empire. During the World War II, sinubukan ng mga Hapon na magkaroon ng Japanese Empire sa Southeast Asia, kaya nagkaroon ng World War II. Kaya gusto nilang i-capture tayo doon, maging under sa kanila, under the Japanese Empire. Okay? So, yon. Kaya, na-mention sa Bible during the Babylonian Empire that there are people who are guarding the temple. Okay? In the Bible, in Ezekiel and so many books in the Bible, they describe or they use the word watchmen or temple guards. Okay? May mga templo kasi ang religious gathering ng mga Hudyo or mga Jews noon. At meron silang temple guards or watchmen. And not only that, sa kanilang mga cities, meron mga temple guards. Nandun sila sa mga tore. And ano yung kanilang trabaho? Whenever they see enemy from afar approaching the temple or approaching the city, they are going to blow the trumpet. Okay, so the word temple guards and the word watchmen were mentioned in the Holy Bible, whose duty was to protect the city, but actually that is not the original meaning of the watchmen in the Bible. They do not protect the city. Actually, ang kanilang purpose muna ay to blow the trumpet, to sound the trumpet if mayroong kalaban na darating, to warn the people. Yan. So, of course, they are part of the soldiers, but practically, sila yung mga watchmen na nagbabantay para tinitignan kung may darating na mga kaaway. So, if you go back also sa history ng Spain at history ng Spanish colonization sa Pilipinas, you notice na matataas yung mga bell towers ng mga churches. Yung mga bell towers ng mga churches during the Spanish time in the country ay dual yung kanilang purpose. Okay? So, dapat mataas para yung echo ng bell ay marinig sa malayong lugar. Another thing, ginagamit din yung mga bell tower na naglalagay sila doon ng mga watchmen para makita nila pag may parating na kaaway. Particularly nung nagkaroon na ng mga revolution against the Spanish government. So what else in the ancient, among the ancient police? In ancient Egypt, they have the Magi. Okay, they organize police force, but they are not members of the military force. Ang military, they were the ones who go to war against nearby countries in Egypt, and they created a police force within the empire of Egypt or within Egypt. And further, during the Roman Empire, the Roman Emperor Augustus, okay, the first Roman Emperor, he used the word, or he created the vigilis. Okay, you have now the word vigilant. When you say vigilant, you have to be alert, you have to guard. That's the idea of the word vigilant. So the word vigilis is referring to a purposeful or watchful staying awake. And these people, basically, they came up with a group called vigilis also. They were armed with staves or wood or metal. And first, they were tasked to keep peace and fight fire. So, doble yung trabaho nila. Okay? Sila yung mga nakahawak na mga metals or woods. Okay? And then, they try to control the people para magkaroon ng kaayusan sa community. And at the same time, they also do the firefighting. Just like in our time, before the Philippine National Police, kapag pulis ka, kapag alerto kang pulis, doon ka sa patrol at saka investigation. Pero pag medyo sablay ka na pulis, dadalhin ka doon sa jail. Pulis ka pero jail guard ka. Tapos nasa jail division kang tawag noon. Pag mas medyo sablay ka pa na pulis noon, baka dadalhin ka pa sa fire division. And then with the legislation of the Republic Act 6975, they separated those divisions into bureaus. Okay, kaya nagkaroon ng Bureau of Fire Protection and the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology. But during the INP, the Integrated National Police, before the Philippine National Police, mayroong mga jail division at mayroong fire division noon ang Integrated National Police. Kaya may mga bumbero noon na nakasukbit sila ng baril. Okay, kasi police sila pero nasa fire division sila. Just to understand if ever hindi nyo alam yon. Kasi baka malamang karamihan sa inyo obviously hindi pa pinanganak nung panahon na yan. Number 6, it means a purposeful or watchful staying awake. So we already discussed that. That is the word vigilis. Okay, but today, in English, that is the word vigilant. Okay, kaya minsan kapag nasa uniform services kayo, tinatawag kayo na mag-vigil. Because you are going to stay awake para walang mag-vigil na tulog. You have to stay awake, magbantay. That's the idea. Number 7, the Egyptians organized a police force called Magi. The Magis are members of the military force. Okay, the answer there is wrong. The second one is wrong. only the first statement is correct because the BJs are not members of the military force. Okay, so now as we move on sa modern times, sa English, sa England, and sa part of Europe, they came up with the frank pledge system or the mutual pledge. So a community is divided into groups of 10 men. The word 10, that is tithe, means 10. Ang ibig sabihin ng tithes. Kaya sa churches, may mga churches, just like in our church, meron kaming tithes na tinatawag. 10% of your income goes to the church. So that's the idea of tithes, no? So group of 10 men, tithing men. Meron ding mga tinatawag na group of hundreds men. Doon sa Roman Empire, meron tinang tinatawag na 100 men. Yung kanilang leader ay centurion. Pag sinabing centurion, leader ka ng 100 men. Kaya yung word na century is 100 years. Para maintindihan nyo lang yung mga words na yan. So on the other hand, na-divide yan sa England at sa Europe, nagkaroon sila ng 10 men, group of 10 men. Sa atin ngayon, parang squad na yan. So they were responsible for the conduct of each other and to band together for their community's protection. So, hindi lamang nila pinoprotect yung kanilang community, but rather, tinitignan din nila na tama yung gawain ng kanilang kasama. Okay? Kaya kapag mayroon silang kasamang loko-loko, ay pwede lang arestuhin to. Okay? At the same time, sila rin yung magtutulungan na aaresto kung may loko-loko doon sa community. Then later on, you have the hue and cry. The word hue. The complainant or victim goes to the middle of the community and shout to call all male residents to assemble. Sabi niya, magnanakaw, magnanakaw. Di ba? Okay? Yan. Okay. Mamamatay tao, pinatay ako. Hindi pwede kasi patay na siya. No? So, punta siya sa center of the middle of the community and will siya sa pinaka-plaza nila. The victim reports his complaint to the assembly. Sabi niya, may pumatay sa akin, may nagnakaw, di ba? So all the male residents will go after the criminal and apprehend the criminal. What about the shire rib system? Okay, so again, sinubdivide nila yung mga cities or mga communities. Okay, they came up with shire or a district. And it is taken care of a rib. By the way, the word reeve, there are people in Europe who could not pronounce the word reeve, so they pronounce reef, just like the English people before, they could not pronounce the word reeve, so they say reef. Okay, so they combine the word sheriff, so it pertains to a ruler. Of course, the sheriff before was not a chief law enforcer officer only. He also the maker of the law. He was also the judge and imposed punishment. But today, when you say sheriff, you are referring to a police officer. And during the olden times, a reeve is appointed by the king and directly reports to the king in its enforcement of laws and order in his shire. Number 8, all but one are characteristics of the hue and cry. So we discussed that already. So what is not a characteristic? That is, members are responsible to the arrest of the violator. Okay? So what is the characteristics? The complainant or victim goes to the middle of the community. The victim now reports his complaint to the assembly. And all male residents will go after the criminal and apprehend him. So letter B, members are responsible to arrest to the arrest of the violator. That is the least among the characteristics. So the first characteristics of the hue and cry, first, the complainant will go to the middle of the community. Then he reports, and then all the male residents will go after him. So A, C, and D, that is the basic characteristics of the hue and cry. Letter B is the least among the characteristics. So it is not only the members, but rather all the male residents. Take note, all the male residents. Okay, that's why letter B is not one, or it is the least among the characteristics of the hue and cry. Number 9, who was appointed by the king and directly reports to the king in the Middle Ages? You call them the reeve. Okay? So what about the keepers of the peace or the watchmen? We will discuss that in the following slides. So the keepers of the peace, King Richard of England in 1195 commissioned certain knights. No, you know the knights, yung mga may bakal na nasuot-suot, nakatakip pati mukha. So the knights were called the preserver of the peace in unruly areas because take note that we have the United Kingdom, meaning there were so many kingdoms in England before. So they just united that today, the United Kingdom. And ang idea kasi ng economy during that time is feudalism. May mga servants, may mga landowners like that, may mga tenants, ganon. So may mga ko-complain, mga magugulo na mga low-class people, the lower society. So the knights were appointed para i-preserve yung peace sa mga barbaric na mga tao sa komunidad. Not necessarily barbaric, pero yung mga magugulo na mga tao. Okay, so they were commissioned or they were responsible to the king for ensuring that the law was upheld and they preserved the king's peace. Kaya tinatawag silang keepers of the peace. Who else? King Charles, on the other hand, further in 1663, towards the end or towards the beginning of the Age of Enlightenment and towards the beginning of the modern period, King Charles II of England in 1663, he came up with shiver and shake. They were old people and would run if they see trouble or heard cry for help. You might be wondering, bakit itong matatanda? Kasi ganito yon. Ang mga matatanda kasi, very less yung kanilang tulog sa gabi yung mga yan. Minsan tutulog lang yan, 2 hours, 3 hours lang mga yan. So, very vigilant yung mga matatanda. I remember when I was still a security guard, may kasama kaming more than senior citizen na siya, no? Kasi magse-70 years old siya noon. Gustong-gusto siya ng aming client na British kasi di natutulog sa gabi. Kunti lang ang tulog niya. Yan. So, ganun din ang panahon ni King Charles. So, yung mga matatanda, since di sila masyadong natutulog na sa gabi, they were just watching along the streets. Okay? Kapag may nakita sila na mga magnanakaw or mga criminal, they just would run. Okay? And they would, we call it cry for help. They shiver. Okay? Nanginginig, parang ganon. Yan. So, that's the idea of the Charlies or the shiver and shake. Pero sa Pilipinas ngayon, pag matanda ka na, hindi ka na pwedeng maging gwardiya at saka pulis. Pero maganda, pag yung matatanda na maging patrol officer, hindi na yan natutulog sa gabi. Pag mga bata-bata, sigurado yan, tulog ng tulog sa duty yan. Mga SOP, sleeping on duty. Okay, so towards the modern period, we have the Bow Street Runners, founded by Henry Fielding. Okay, this group of privately paid persons was the first organized attempt at follow-up investigations of crimes. Okay, medyo nagkagulo yata yung text ko dyan. Anyways, the Bow Street Runners, founded by Henry and John Fielding, magkapatid yan, ang tawag dun sa lugar nila is Bow Street. And the Bow Street, andoon yung mga magistrate, nandun yung mga courtrooms, nandun sila. So since walang police, ang government, ang meron lang noon sa England ay meron silang military. And meron silang mga royal guards. The royal guards are limited to guarding the royal family, the royal families, the kings, and the relatives. On the other hand, walang nagbabantay, walang tumutulong sa mga ordinary people. So si Henry Fielding, nag-create siya ng kanyang business. So walang mautusan ang korte, okay, kulang yung sheriff ng korte na hahabol, maghanap ng mga suspect. So eventually, Henry Fielding offered their services to the courts in Bow Street. That's why they were called Bow Street Runners or Bow Street Horse Runners, because many of them use horses to run after criminals and to run after thieves. First, they were called the thief catchers. Okay, so they also follow up investigation of crimes, and they were paid by the victims actually. So that is one of the precursors of policing in England or in Europe. Again, balikan natin. Ang situation noon, military ang meron. Okay, walang police, may mga royal guard. So, ang nababantayan lang yung territory at saka yung tinatawag natin yung royal families. At walang nag-iimbestiga at nanguhuli ng mga kriminal. So, here comes Henry and John Fielding. They created their business and offered their services sa mga magistrate sa Bow Street. So, eventually, they came up now with the first organized police force in England. That is called the London Metropolitan Police. So, yung London, medyo malapit-lapit na yan yung sa Scotland. Kaya tinawag na Metropolitan. So, you have the City of London and the nearby areas. Kaya naging Metropolitan. So, kinocover lang niya, hindi lang sa London, pero sa mga nearby areas na yan. Okay, so it was created by Sir Robert Peel. So, Sir Robert Peel, the father of modern policing. Sir, bakit modern? Tanong ng marami. For your information, ang modern period kasi, hindi yan nagsimula sa ating panahon. Actually, nasa computer age na tayo. Okay, tapos na nga tayo ng X generation eh. Diba? Kayo, tapos na kayo ng X generation. Mga millennials, tinatawag natin. But the modern period started when people began to turn away from their religion. When people started to emphasize free will. When people started to emphasize the human will, not the will of God. Okay, the modern period is an offshoot of the Enlightenment period. The Enlightenment period is the period where people began to get away from the religions and to get away from the Bible. And they started to emphasize the rule of man in his own destiny. Kaya yun ang tinatawag na modern period. Okay? That's why Robert Peel, during that time, the modern policing, kasi sabi niya, hindi, kailangan mabantayan yung mga tao. At dapat kukuha tayo sa mga common people. Okay, so eventually, it is recognized as the first modern police, the London Metropolitan Police, and the founder of it is Sir Robert Peel. He became the father of modern policing. So he organized the modern police force, and later on, it was called the Scotland Yard Police because the Scotland Yard, that's where they study, the Scotland Yard Academy. So yan ang dun pumupunta yung ating mga kapulisan, mga officers natin, mga high-ranking officers natin, may mga mangilan-ilan na nakakapunta sa Scotland Yard Academy upang mag-aral doon ng policing system. Okay, so marami ang na-create ni Robert Peel na principles of policing, which I am going to discuss it to you later on. Well, partly, yung kanyang nag-set siya ng qualifications. Okay? Ang qualification sa kanila is 5'9". Kasi matatangkad sila, so ang minimum height nila ay 5'9". Okay? And then, yung kanyang yung mga principles natin na span of control, unity of command, almost galing kay Robert Peel yan. Okay? So, ang tawag niya noon ay mga pillars or bobbies ang tawag niya. Robert, no? The nickname of Robert is Bobby. Yung palayaw ng Robert ay Bobby. Kaya tinatawag niya mga bobbies or yung kanyang mga na-create na mga police officer. Well, prior to him, you have Patrick Colquhoun na nag-propose sa London City na magkaroon ng uniformed police officers pero hindi siya sinunod. Kasi nga si Patrick Colquhoun ay isang ordinary citizen. Si Sir Robert Peel belongs to the royal families or to the high members of the society. Kaya pag may nakalagay na sir sa initial niya or sa initial name niya, title, that's a title referring to that these people belong or that this man belongs to the higher echelon of the society. Okay? Now, as we move on further, before we close this lesson, what is the difference of the police today compared to the ancient times? Again, the word police before does not necessarily mean police officers. They may be referring to civil authorities, which is tasked to maintain peace and order, enforce the law, protect the lives and properties, and ensure public safety. At the same time, the civil authorities before also make policies. While today, as we use the word police, we are now referring to a police agency or a member of the police. In the Philippines, we have the Philippine National Police. Okay? And it may be referring also to other law enforcement organizations authorized by the state, just like the PIDEA. They have that police power. Okay? Also, you have the customs police. Okay? The immigration police. You have the state university police. Okay? So there are so many agencies in the Philippines who are clothed with police authority, but some of them we call them police, but others we don't call them police, although they have that police authority. Okay, so that's the idea. And finally, based on the functions of the members of tithings or tithing men, do they act or perform their functions the same with law enforcers? Basically, yes. The members of the tithings or tithing men were responsible for the conduct of each other. So that the mutual agreement. I'm going to guard you. You are going to guard me. Okay, and not only that, whether there are misconducts among the members. Okay, if there are rogue members or those who have violated the law, all members are responsible to the arrest of that violator. Okay, and bring the person to the authorities. Okay, so in the Philippines, we have also the IMIG, no? Okay, of the PNP. Okay, so they try to apprehend, investigate rogue officers, and they arrest them. Okay, so that is the idea. So we end this lesson. Thank you for watching, and may God bless you.